And this is Fanalysis, where we combine the analytics of fantasy football with the metrics of sports betting to find the best plays for the Jets and the Giants games here in Week 2. Steve Overmyer alongside sports handicapper that you can find on Twitter as Old Man Who Bets, Geoff Sheasby. Joining us, Jeff, good to see you once again. Let's start off here with this Jets and the Niners game. The Jets are touchdown underdogs at home. Now, usually home dogs are where the pros make their money. Why don't you see it that way this week?
You know, this is going to be a tough one for me. And, you know, I wish I was bringing, more positivity to New York football in general. But the Jets look like the Jets in Week 1, and it doesn't seem to get any easier here in Week 2. They were one of the worst teams in the league. I like to frame it as the leader in lack of efficiency last year. 32 out of 32 in terms of offensive efficiency. And this offense picked up right where they left off at 26th in the league. That's a major yikes for me. When we look at the Jets opened up last week, punt, interception. Yeah, sure, the Bills have a good defense, but this was hard to watch. And the 49ers defense, quite frankly, is just as fierce, if not fiercer, than the Bills. So, the only real positive I see here is the West Coast team coming to the East Coast for an early game. Will that help them? I'm not entirely sure. And I think, when you look at the public loves the 49ers here, and I think seemingly for a good reason. They struggled in Week 1, but it was against the fully reloaded Cardinals. Some people have some high aspiration for the Cardinals with their acquisitions of Drake and the best wide receiver in the league, DeAndre Hopkins. So you look at the 49ers defense, 14th ranked this year, of course, one game, small sample size. I think they're poised for a stellar game and regressing back positively towards their second-ranked defense last year. But, you look at the line, it was 6.5 last week versus the Bills. I thought that was a little small. I would have liked it to be more in sort of the 8.5 range. I think the same thing this week. I think it's a little small. So I'm personally probably not going to touch it. I think you could flip a coin and say, Jets versus the Niners here. If I had to bet it, I would probably bet the Niners. A little bit of a public play. Feels short, but they let us down last week even on a short line. So here I am. I'm staying away from the game.
We know that if that line moves, sometimes it can move by 1.5, 2 points before game time, and clearly Kittle is going to be questionable until actual game time as well. Does his injury force you to at least think about jumping on one side or the other if the line makes a movement?
Yeah, I think you could buy it up to even 7.5, get it past that key number of 7 in favor of the Jets. I think what's really interesting is the Jets do have a good run defense. Their secondary is questionable at best. So you remove Kittle, obviously you've got Deebo Samuel, who's out for a couple weeks. That certainly makes the Jets far more appetizing. I think the Niners just signed Mohamed Sanu. He's familiar with the system. How will he slate in Week 1? Will Kendrick Bourne continue to be the guy? I'm not even sure who the backup tight end is off the top of my head, unfortunately. So, in terms of injuries, in terms of home dog narrative, in terms of West Coast coming to the East Coast, I think for sure the 7, buy it to 7.5 feels good for the Jets. But there's equally as much of a narrative, backed in data going from last year and even to this year that the Jets offense is truly the Jets offense. Le'Veon Bell's now out for a couple weeks as well, who's one of their more explosive playmakers. They lost Robbie Anderson, who just went for 100 down in Carolina in his first game. Sure, Jamison Crowder looks good. Their tight end's pretty solid with Herndon. But, I think the line is just where it should be, and it's hard for me to find an edge kind of either way.
Yeah, and now Crowder is a question mark for the Jets offense as well. So there's another one thing you throw in there, too. Let's move on to the Giants, because they're in Chicago, where it's the first time that Illinois bettors can lay money on a Bears home game, and that line has moved up a tick from 4.5 to 5.5. Is there an angle here?
I mean, you certainly love, first-time bettors, total amateurs coming in and moving the line. And, I'd like to think that, the New York football teams aren't going to open 0-4 collectively this year. And I think there's some value probably on the Giants here. But, again, this one's a bit of a coin toss. We look at Week 1 for the Giants, a bit of a mixed bag. The Pittsburgh defense clearly said, we're going to let Danny Dimes try to beat us. They sold out to almost a religious level to stop Saquon. He had 15 carries for 6 yards, similar to Gostkowski's effort. I think this could have been one of Saquon's worst performances since the freshman year of high school. But he was getting hit 3 or 4 yards behind the line on every carry. He didn't even have a chance. But then you have Danny Dimes. He looked pretty good. He was routinely finding Slayton, Shepard, even Saquon. They all had 6 catches apiece. So they stayed in the game. But unfortunately, Big Ben then turned back, the clocks and time and delivered 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. And even Benny Snell, their backup running back, went for 113. So On to week 2, right? Obviously, the offense of the Bears struggles far more than the offense of the Steelers. We've got the 22nd ranked defense of the Giants versus the 19th ranked offense for the Bears. That's a wash. The X factor here in terms of data would be looking at the 12th ranked Chicago defense versus the 30th ranked Giants in terms of offensive efficiency, which is scary at first glance. But I think I'm giving way more credit to the Pittsburgh defense for having them so low on the list rather than the actual performance of the Giants. And I think the public seems to agree. 65% of the Giants are 65% of bets are currently backing the Giants. So
what's amazing to me about this is that Joe Judge is almost doubling down on the run game. He said, yeah, we couldn't run the ball, but it just means we're not aggressive enough. They clearly want to try to keep this game going, keep the time of possession on their side of the ball more or less as long as possible. Do you feel like they have it in them to be able to control the game as they wish to?
I think they do. You look at Chicago last week. They let Adrian Peterson run for 93, his first start with a team that he's only on a week 4. Of course, Adrian Peterson, one of the all-time greats, but that was still surprising for him to come in and gash that defense. So Saquon's certainly on that level. I think Saquon does struggle sometimes to hit wide open holes. Of course, he then busts off for 35-yard runs when the play is seemingly dead. So I'd like for him to kind of get the fundamentals down a little bit more. But at the end of the day, this is a Chicago team that finds ways to lose. I think last week was the first time in quite some time they had that fourth quarter comeback, but that was more just the Lions being the Lions. The Lions seemingly cannot finish a game to save their lives. I think they were one of the worst teams last year in terms of one-score games, losing almost all of them. Same thing. I think they blew a 10-point lead last week. So wow. I lean towards the Giants at 5.5 here. It's certainly not my favorite play of the week. I think there could be some value towards the under at 42. It's one of the lowest lines of the week. And that's kind of just hoping for the combination of Chicago's offensive woes to continue and even the Giants defense to step up. The first half, the Giants defense did look pretty fierce, getting pressure on Big Ben. Of course, that comes into the question of, was Big Ben rusty after a year off, or did the Giants defense look good? You could go either way there. But I think that this will be a pretty close game, which favors the Giants at plus 5.5 in a relatively low-scoring affair. So would lean towards that under 42.
All right, Geoff, we appreciate all of your insights. That's a look at his Jets and the Giants plays. Don't forget to check out his top plays of the week as well. For Geoff Sheasby, I'm Steve Overmyer, and this is Fanalysis.